This video is about king, rook, pawn endgames. The current position is white to move. Try to find the best sequence in this position and write down your answer. You may stop the video now. Were you able to spot the continuation in this position? So here we're thinking about endgames, and we can try to think if I was able to put my king somewhere, if I just left it off the board and put it somewhere in this position, what would be the ideal square for the king? So you could probably think of this position here of bringing just the king to h5. So how can I get to h5, right? The idea would be to target this pawn and at one point bring our rook and just capture this pawn and be up 2 pawns and go for an endgame where we can just win easily. So if we want to bring it to h5, we can start by bringing the king here to g4. Okay, so g4, if they were to move the rook somewhere here, and we can think of like what happens if the rook just covers a5 and doesn't allow us to go to h5. Then we would just be able to bring our rook here, not allowing the king to move anywhere, and then they would have to just defend the rook, and it would be the same idea. If they don't do anything about it, then we would just be able to grab the pawn like this. So in this position, they would just move the rook to c6 or something, and then we move our king here to h5. They try to attack our pawn, and we can just push the pawn forward. If they were to give us a check here or something, now we just cover with the pawn, and we'll be able to go for the pawn here on h6. So here, they would just bring the rook to defend the pawn, and now we just finish one of the last moves here, rook h7, to then just grab the pawn and be up material and head into an endgame where we're winning. The current position is white to move. Try to find the best sequence in this position and write down your answer. You may stop the video now. Were you able to spot the continuation in this position? So this one is a little bit tricky for an endgame, right? So we have a pawn on a4, and the pawn is very hard to defend. It is a passed pawn, but here we would start obviously with the move king b2, right? Deflecting the rook from here, but we need to use this pawn here as a decoy. We want to deflect the black king from the side of the center side of the board. So here we would go ahead with pushing the pawn and think about it, right? Because it's a little bit tricky to like defend this pawn, and then we would just lose our pawn on the g file. So it's hard to defend everything. So here we try to deflect the black pieces, and then we're start bringing our king forward to their center. And then in this position, if we just keep pushing our pawn forward, the king would go for it, right? So we just actually deflect the king, and then we're heading towards the center, and we want to go for the f6 pawn for the black pieces, and always keep our g pawn ready to go for a promotion. So if they were to capture, we move forward with the king. Here they can go with like rook b6, but here, for example, if they give us a check or something, we can always just move forward and at one point just grab this pawn here for the black pieces. If they were to like try to capture our g pawn, we can always just get closer to this, right? So in this position here, they would just go with something like this, bring the rook there. And now if you were able to bring the king somewhere, an ideal square for you, where would it be? g6, right? So ideally we want to bring the king all the way to g6 to then trade the rooks and have our passed pawn, because the king is very far away from the rest of the play. So here we actually have to go down to then go up, because we cannot go over the path of the rook, right? So we go down to e4, gives us a check, we go up. If they trade, that's good for us, but they don't trade, they want to defend the pawn, and then we finally make it to g6 with the king, and then we able to capture. They won't want to capture, and we have to be precise with the continuation here on the end game. We want to start pushing our pawn forward. If they put the rook there and it doesn't allow us to move the king forward, then we would just move to the side. If they give us a check, we have to move forward, but we shouldn't just go back to the same square from before. We go forward like this, and if they were to like bring the rook like this, we can just push the pawn forward like this, okay? So they go rook d1 to try to give us some checks or something. We just push the pawn forward. Okay, king moves forward. We go to the side again. So it's like a zigzag, you know, pattern that we're following. Diagonal to the front and the right, like this. King moves forward. We go to the other side to now just promote, like push the pawn forward here. And let's say rook e7, push the pawn forward, give us a check. Where do we go? If we go forward here to f8, they can just give us more checks back and forth. So we can actually just go back king over there, and we can just block with the rook, right? So for example, if they were to do something like this, we can just capture, checks, and then promote to a queen. So here they'll try to prevent by just bringing the rook all the way back, and we can just promote here, because if they give us a check, we can just move to the side, and if they capture our queen, we can just capture back with the rook and then be able to win this endgame. The current position is white to move. Try to find the best sequence in this position and write down your answer. You may stop the video now. We're able to find the continuation in this position. So in this position, we have a passed pawn and it's about to promote. So here, unlike the previous exercise, we can try to keep this pawn, but we need to be precise with our moves. So here we start by getting closer to the rook, because whatever the rook moves, we can always go forward. But here we also want to go forward and also block some of the squares from the king for them to use. So then we'll just go king d4. We can go forward as well as covering some of the squares so that the king doesn't go directly and block our king, right? So in this position here, we can go ahead with this move, black king to c5, getting closer to the pawn. And here we would have to give a check. So here what happens if the king goes up? We can actually give a check and then grab their rook, because we will be on time to be in front of their king and then block him like this, right? So for example, something like this, can show you, and then we will be able to be in front of the king, right? So we would have opposition, and we can like open the evaluation bar and we would be winning, totally winning. So as long as we keep opposition, we will be able to win. But let's bring it back. Let's bring it back here. So it's not ideal if the king goes in front of the rook and then we are able to exchange the rooks. But ideally they would just go down and then we can just give a check. We give a check, and the idea is to actually defend the pawn from the other side. So now the rook has to move. The rook has to move. We move our king to the side. And here, whenever they go king c2, are you able to promote here? If we were to promote here in this position, that's a perpetual check, and that will be a draw, because we are allowing the rook to just give us a bunch of checks here, unlimited checks, until it's a draw, threefold repetition. So we need to be careful with this, and we need to prevent this. We're about to win, so we need to give some breathing room to the king. Now we're giving them the a4 square. So now, if they give us a check, we go up. If the king goes up like this, we're able to promote because of the a1 square. They cannot give us a check there, right? So in this position, if they give us a check here, we go down, check, down, and that's it. After this, we will be able to win this endgame up a queen.